In this video, I'm going to share the 9 mistakes to avoid when house hunting, leveraging my experience having built a UK-wide home buying company, British Homebuyers, and nationwide estate agency, British Home Sellers, that has dealt with over 13,000 transactions, totaling over £3.3 billion of property. So I'm packaging my 11 years of pain learning all these mistakes the hard way into a video less than 10 minutes long for you. Let's get into it. Mistake 1, paying the asking price. Right now, over 80% of properties sell below the asking price, which I think most people just don't realise, because in reality, it's not a statistic you're going to expect your local agent is going to be keen to advertise to you. But it's true. Look at the graph. This means the majority of the time, the asking price is more likely to be above the actual market value than market value, which is really why it's so important to look at sold house prices as a comparison of what you should pay, not marketing prices. It also means that if your budget is, say, 200 grand, you shouldn't worry about looking at houses on the market for 210,000 or even 220,000, because more often than not, you're going to be able to buy a house at below that marketing price. This leads to another key mistake to avoid. Mistake 2, your first offer being accepted. If your first offer is accepted, don't celebrate. The chances are you've offered too much, because you will never know if a lower offer might have been accepted instead. You actually haven't really negotiated if your first offer is accepted. It is pretty common practice when beginning the negotiation to bid about 10% below the asking price, but in reality, you have to consider this case by case. If the property has been on the market for 5 minutes and already has loads of viewings, then clearly it's an exception. Or if it's been sat on the market for several months unsold, then perhaps it may make more sense to offer less, but ultimately make sure your first offer isn't the one that's accepted. But probably a bigger mistake to make is mistake 3, not being willing to walk away. Let me share with you some stats about the UK property market you may not know. In 2023, 52.8% of properties marketed never ended up selling. 1 in 8 properties had their prices reduced each month, and 1 in 5 sales never completed because the sale fell through. It's important you understand these odds, because most properties on the market aren't competitive buys and probably won't ever end up selling. Yes, you may fall in love with a property, but if the seller won't accept a realistic price, you need to be able to walk away, otherwise you risk overpaying for it. If you're willing to walk away and you do walk away from properties, you're going to start noticing agents calling you back weeks later, seeing if that initial offer is still on the table. Now I've given you 3 mistakes to avoid to get you from starting house hunting to hopefully onto offers being accepted. Let's look at mistakes to avoid when getting an offer accepted. Mistake 4, visit the property different times of the day. A quiet road on a weekend might be a busy one during the week. Quiet neighbours during the week might be noisy neighbours at the weekend. So look, you get the idea. The enjoyment you get out of a property and its location can drastically change by the time of day and the day of the week. So I'd recommend you do the following. You drive to the property during rush hour and during school pickup and or drop times. You visit the property on a weekday and a weekend, and just double check you're happy with everything about the property and its location after having done those 2 things. But it's not just the property and its location you should watch out for. Mistake 5, not meeting the neighbours. Having good neighbours is the most overlooked value when buying property, but more importantly, having bad neighbours has the potential to make a dream home a complete nightmare. I know it can be awkward, but when you think you're set on a property, knock on the doors of neighbours around, introduce yourself, get a sense for what they're like, but most importantly, ask them about the property you're considering. Ask them about the streets, the area. You'll be surprised what you'll find out, because naturally when you're buying a property, the seller or the agent is always going to highlight all the positives about the property and the area. Whereas neighbours are just far more likely to give you a more objective, unvarnished view to those exact same questions you might have. If so far you've not fallen for any of those 5 mistakes, let's start talking about the mistakes to avoid when proceeding to purchase a property. Mistake 6, picking the cheapest solicitor. Now, I think this comment might backfire on me, but here we go. There are many great solicitors and even estate agents out there, but there are also so many terrible ones. I'm sure you may have had your fair share of both, and if so, share your experience in the comments below. But the biggest problem I see is customers will put so much time and effort picking us as an agent, for instance, but then pick the most terrible solicitor once we've sold their property, purely because they were the cheapest. When it comes to property, whether you're using an agent or solicitor, you honestly get what you pay for in the most part. Generally, the reason a solicitor may cost less is because they'll stretch the workload. One solicitor will be dealing with more cases, for instance. Exactly the same thing with estate agencies. And that is when you see the quality of service go downhill because they're squeezing the cost. Whereas generally, the more realistically priced solicitors and agents are able to allocate more reasonable workloads because you're paying what's needed as a fee for that service. Choose wisely, and if you're not sure which solicitors to use, why not get a quote from mine linked in the description below. Me and my customers have used them across thousands of transactions over a decade plus. They're incredibly reliable, and you can track everything on an online portal, which is kind of neat. But anyway, in the same way you don't want to skimp on a solicitor, you certainly don't want to penny pinch on the next mistake. Mistake 7, skipping the survey. Skipping the survey is like buying a car without a service or MOT history. Unless you're a mechanic that's qualified to look at the car before you buy it, you just shouldn't do it. But despite this, 7 million homeowners didn't get a survey done before buying their home, which I just think is mad. Unless you're a builder or a surveyor yourself, and you're actually comfortable to assess the multitude of signs that a property may have issues, then pay to get a survey. I'm personally very comfortable about picking up telltale signs of issues on a property, but even so, I always get a survey done. But if you already know 100% that you're getting a survey done, then a common mistake is not getting the right survey done. Mistake 8, Homebuyers Report or a full building survey. Your mortgage lender might not actually need you to do a home buyer's report or a full building survey. They might just organise a mortgage valuation, which in reality is not a survey for your benefit. It's really just an assessment to make sure that if they need to repossess your property, the property will be worth enough to cover the debt they're giving you. Your lender isn't concerned about how much money you're going to need to spend on repairs once you move in. All they really care about is the property having enough value to cover that 75% mortgage or that 90% mortgage. In reality, you need to pay for an additional home buyer's report or full building survey. The difference between the two is a home buyer's report will highlight the condition of the property in addition to giving you a valuation and reinstatement cost of rebuilding the property for insurance purposes. A full building survey is a detailed inspection of the property. It will include detailed advice on the condition of the property and outline any potential risks or hidden defects. So in reality, any property in poor condition or over the age of about 80 years, you should in reality always look to pay for a full building survey. If it's a newer property, you can perhaps get away with a home buyer's report maybe, but to be frank, unless you're planning to completely refurbish a property and so don't really care if things come up, you should absolutely get a full building survey done, in my opinion. If it picks up a problem, it has immediately paid for itself. If it doesn't, you paid for that peace of mind. But perhaps the most overlooked mistake to avoid of all is mistake 9, not checking the property at exchange and completion. The moment you exchange on a purchase, you are legally obligated to complete the purchase. And once you complete, you legally then own that property. That's why when you exchange contracts, although you don't technically own the property, because you're legally obligated to complete, that's why you still need to get the property insured. You need to get buildings insurance set up from that actual exchange date. Because in theory, if the house is vandalized and you exchange without realizing, you're trapped. There's nothing you can do. You have to then complete on the property. It's why it's so important you visually check the property before you exchange to be 100% sure you're happy with everything. We had an instance where a buyer didn't do this, and through no fault of anyone, there was a leak that actually created quite a bit of damage no one noticed. Now, in this case, the previous owner was really, really good about it, and they actually paid to get it repaired, but technically they didn't need to do that. The buyer was legally the owner and obligated to sort it, and essentially had inherited the problem at that stage. So look, I hope this video has helped. Like and subscribe if you want to see more of me, and I'll see you in the next video up here.